أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولقد بعثنا في كل أمة رسولا أن يعبدوا الله واجتنبوا الطاغوت فمنهم من حاد الله ومنهم من حقت عليه الضلالة فسيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف كان عاقبة المكذبين. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "For we assuredly sent amongst every people a messenger with the command, serve Allah and eschew evil. Of the people were some whom Allah guided and some on whom error became inevitably established. So travel throughout the earth and see what was the end of those who denied the truth." Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another edition of Islam for Europeans in our continuing series on why European Muslim sub-communities are needed. And reason number 9 is reducing Islamophobia. Now this is a very hot topic. You know, we always see a lot of Muslim organizations saying that they're going to end Islamophobia. So I'm sure this is something on a lot of people's minds, especially Muslim minds in the West. But first, as a caveat, you're never going to end Islamophobia. You're just not. It's Allah stated in the Quran that non-Muslims, some of them, are never going to like Islam. So you just have to keep that in mind, first of all. And we're not suggesting that our concept is going to end Islamophobia either, but we feel it's a very important aspect of the da'wah that has been really missing, I guess because of its controversy, but for other reasons as well. So we'll dive into that. Another caveat is that we're going to go through some of the common ways that Muslims, quote unquote, combat or try to lower Islamophobia. We're not going to, at the same time, we're not discrediting their efforts, right? So a lot of these brothers and sisters put a lot of effort into trying to make life better for the Muslim community in the West, and we don't want to discredit their efforts because they put a lot of effort into it, and who wants to be insulted or be told that what they're doing is incorrect or in some cases detrimental. We're also not suggesting that this solution, i.e. European Muslim sub-communities, it should be equated with watering down our religion. It may seem like that because we're suggesting quote unquote a European Islam, but it's not the same European Islam that, say, Emmanuel Macron has posited in France, where he wants sort of a civic Islam as opposed to an ethnic French Islam. In saying that, we're saying that we can follow the Sunnah as European descendant Muslims, but it has to be adapted within our cultural paradigm. Okay. And again, in alluding to this, we can also look at the symbolic victories and defeats and why Muslims tend to concentrate on these sort of symbolic attacks on Islam, which really have no substance, but are still seen as very important. One example of this would be the concept of, like the conservatives in the West saying that Muslims are trying to establish Sharia law, and we're barely 1% of the population. There's absolutely no substance to that argument, but it's just seen as like a smear. So Muslims take the bait and try to defend attacks against that. Other things, talk about minarets, in European countries, there's no Islamic laws that I know of that stipulate that you have to have a minaret in order to have a mosque. I mean, and there's other ways you can get around it as well. I mean, any type of raised area, in general, Islamic buildings should take on the local architecture, and that's what we see in China and Malaysia and things like that. So again, and I always want to say that in best interest for European Muslim converts to collectivize, to integrate, to create their own Islamic identity. But we're not saying that we should separate or segregate ourselves from the greater Muslim community. Now, I've said that before, but we always want to bear that in mind. So why do they hate us? When you ask Muslims this question, why do non-Muslims hate Muslims, especially in the Anglosphere? Their responses may be varied. From the left, one of their common arguments is that it's seen as a religion of people for people of color. That we're seen as that Muslims are seen as the other. They're seen as foreign, and because they have a darker skin color than us and look different than us, then that is one of the large reasons why they dislike us. Which, if you take it to its most logical endpoint, they should support Islam for Europeans, because then the Muslim community would have more white people, which solve their argument. But no, the real reasons why non-Muslims dislike Islam is, terrorist attacks is one giant example. I mean, anywhere from 9/11 to 7/7 to the recent attacks in Europe, the beheadings with Charlie Hebdo. That's a large reason. I mean, they're going to be afraid of the other, and they're going to be terrified because the only Muslims that they see are the ones that are killing people, right? Failure to integrate is another. Muslims, as in general, I wouldn't say all the time, but they tend to self-segregate, and there's good reasons for this sometimes, because they want to stay away from un-Islamic activity like drinking and partying and things like that. So it's understandable why they would, and I did to a large extent myself as well. So it's something that will be difficult to get around. A lot of them think that Muslims are disloyal to the West, and a lot of this has to do with what they see on Muslim Twitter and other social media outlets, where the Muslims who have it in, who see the West as in the antagonist, tend to talk about that a lot, because it's their only outlet through social media. And then they have the louder voice, and the media tends to prop up the left-leaning Muslims. A lot of non-Muslims tend to think that the majority of Muslims think in this kind of like leftist Marxist identity when it comes to Islam and their antipathy towards the West. Barbaric cultural practices is another reason why non-Muslims, particularly white non-Muslims, dislike Muslims. For example, female genital mutilation, which is not practiced by the majority of Muslims. It's anti-Islamic. The type of pharaonic, fourth level FGM that's practiced in the Horn of Africa is not the type of FGM that's condoned. We can get into that later. That's one such example. Another is sort of forced marriages, which is still practiced by some Muslim societies, but again, not all. And even in Canada, Stephen Harper wanted to put a lid on these and sort of go against them. And Muslims, just by default, because it was coming from the Conservative Party, saw it basically as a smear, and that's why they were so against it, even though Islamically we should be against it. I'm not here to endorse the political party. Of course, as anyone knows, I'm not a fan of conservatives in Canada. Growing Muslim resentment towards the Anglosphere. I mean, this is, I alluded to this before on social media, but it's understandable. I mean, the political parties in America, both the left and the right, Democrats, Republicans, have always supported these neoliberal wars in the Muslim world. So, and there's other reasons as well too, which we won't get into. Also, the Nation of Islam. When you have a group that is completely outside the Islamic orthodoxy, calling themselves the Nation of Islam, with the word Islam in there, and a lot of their followers have Arabic names, it's tough to distinguish between them and traditional Orthodox Islam. And even though they're not as popular as they used to be in the 70s and 80s, even still a lot of white people think that that Louis Farrakhan is actually an Orthodox Sunni Muslim, which is incorrect. So a lot of them actually think that white people are the devil. And then finally, we have the whether, regardless of the extent to which you believe, this is true or not, but many Europeans see Islam as part of, quote unquote, the Great Replacement, in which Europeans are being replaced, right? And we could see this with a lot of the videos that they show on, demographic replacement, where most of these European countries, Islam is growing and growing and growing, not so much because of conversion, but just because of mere birth rates, right? So that took an entire part of the video as to why non-Muslims, particularly white non-Muslims in the Anglosphere, dislike Muslims, but I'm going to get into some of the attempts that Muslims have made to combat this in part 2, inshallah.